I realized that I'm just never going to be in a box because there really isn't one. As a kid, I experienced a lot of racism. Our ancestors took care of the land. We took care of everything around us. You know, what stories are you going to be telling? Who's going to want to listen to those stories? I'm so loving and embracing being mixed.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Voices of Resilience podcast. Today's episode, we are sitting down with fiddler, singer-songwriter, and actress Darla Daniels. Coming from a similar multicultural background myself, I am personally so excited to dive into this conversation. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Voices of Resilience podcast. Please enjoy the rest. How are things going? I know you had a crazy busy weekend. Do you want to share a little bit about what was going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it was a crazy weekend. I played 4 shows in
Holy
3
crap.
days. Yeah. And super lucky that it's this busy, but November, like I was saying earlier, is usually crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Friday, I played a show during the day. It was a full day with the school. And Saturday, I did a set at the Oakma Awards, and it was amazing. And it was great to see you there as well.
It was such a beautiful event.
It was.
Yeah.
And I love the city hall. It just sounds incredible in there. And I love the energy. And Saturday night, I was in Plamondon. We did a little private Christmas party gala event. And then yesterday, I played at Blues on White with the same band from Saturday night and celebrated a friend's birthday. And it was just a great time.
You're also recording an EP.
I am.
Too.
Yes.
Yeah. On the very last legs, which is super exciting.
Yeah, putting the finishing touches on it now. And it's been a wild ride. We did a lot in the first week. We had 4 days scheduled. And yeah, we got a lot done. We got all the beds done. We recorded all of the tracks live off the floor. And so now we're just doing some overdubs and finishing touches, harmonies, that kind of thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Do you have like a rough release date for that yet?
Yeah, kind of. We have like a loose outline right now. So the first single hopefully will be out and released on February 7th, which is my dad's birthday.
Oh.
And it's a song that I wrote for my dad a couple of years ago when he passed. So it's a special date and it's a special song. So it kind of inspired the whole EP. So I really want to start it off with that song.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story all on its own. Let's just jump right back to the beginning with your earlier years growing up in Buffalo Lake.
Yes.
Do you want to share a little bit about your earlier years before even finding your way to music and specifically the fiddle? That was your first instrument, right?
No, actually, my first instrument was guitar.
Guitar? Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I got a guitar for Christmas one year, and I think I was about 9 or 10 years old. And at this point, I had already started to kind of write songs and try to sing. And there were some artists that I loved so much. Like I was obsessed with Avril Lavigne and like Blink-182, and I just love like pop punk music.
Early punk, yeah.
Yeah, like really early. And like I wore a tie to school for a bit. I grew up on country music because my dad always played it whenever we drove somewhere. So like Charlie Pride and Merle Haggard. And yeah, music was and still is a huge, huge part of my life. I grew up on gospel music as well. My mom loved playing gospel in the house. And so, yeah, before I really started to get into music, I didn't really do a whole lot other than like hang out with my friends and play video games. It was a really small community that I grew up in. The population now is about 1,200 people. And yeah, just really remote. but beautiful. Like we had a store. We had one store on the settlement, and it had like the essentials, and it was a gas station for a little while.
Yeah.
But other than that, like if you wanted to go to like a drugstore, if you wanted to go to a restaurant, you had to drive like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was beautiful. I love growing up in a rural area that was just surrounded by trees and lakes and animals and wildlife and quiet. Like when you go to bed at night, you go to sleep and all you hear is just the sound of frogs.
Nature.
It's like a symphony, and it just like lulls you to sleep. I think that's the best way to go to sleep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also grew up in a country setting, and it's just hearing you talk about all of the different details like that just threw me right back into it. And I think, it makes sense that you're a storyteller. So
I'd like to think I am. Yeah. It's kind of like a responsibility thing, like you live a story, and people probably pass their stories on to you, and it's like a ripple effect.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the main teaching structure of our own Indigenous ways, right? So
absolutely.
Reclaiming that sense of innate storytelling is it is almost an obligation, especially for someone that is choosing to create, is choosing to lead with their artistic foot forward. So
totally.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's dive into the more of how you found your way towards music, and let's talk about how that initially happened with you. Like, so through your Art Smarts program, that's when it really started like taking hold that you could create music rather than just listen to it or like do it onto the side and stuff like that. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was about 11, and the school that I went to, all the kids from Buffalo Lake Métis settlement, that's where I'm from, all the kids from the settlement went to a school in a hamlet nearby called Caslin. And so the school was called Caslin School. It was an elementary school, K to 9, very small, like 100 kids, maybe K to 9. And I believe that the morale of the school in the earlier years, or at least the years that I was growing up in it was pretty low. And some grades, they really struggled with things like attendance, engagement as well, just due to some of the hardships in the community, and that are really, we're still battling with them to this day, navigating some of those changes that are happening in the community. And you could tell a lot about a community and the state of that community, the well-being of that community, by the children and the women, I believe. And so the school district did something incredible. They brought in a program called Art Smarts. And what they did is they brought in artists from everywhere, and all different kinds of artists. So musicians, dancers, actors, filmmakers, but also like visual art, like painters and muralists as well. And so they brought in each different kind of artist to come and teach the kids different kinds of art for however many months. And so the ones that really spoke to me were the dancers and the filmmakers and the musicians. And it was amazing that they were able to bring in musicians that were Métis, because coming from a Métis settlement, I didn't really have a great connection to my culture. There were teachings, we had elders around, my dad spoke Cree, but I didn't really know much about our music. I didn't know much about our dance and how rich the fabric of our culture is. And so that was a huge missing piece for me and my identity, of that side of my identity, and understanding who I am. So they brought in a fiddle player who is incredibly well known in the area. He's from Calahoo. He's passed on now, but we called him Mushum.
Mushum.
Yeah. And his wife was amazing. She played piano for him, and we called her Cookum. And yeah, they like very quickly became like amazing role models to us kids. So he taught fiddle classes. And so I got to learn how to play fiddle with my friends. And that was amazing. And yeah, they also brought in Gerald White from Kikino. He's also passed now, but he was a pillar in the Métis community. And so Kikino Métis settlement shares a border with Buffalo Lake. And they had a dance group, and they were very connected with their Métis heritage over there. And so we started a dance group for Buffalo Lake, and we started to learn how to jig, and we learned the different kinds of square dances that we do. And I was like, what's the Red River Jig? This is incredible. And I swear to you, like overnight, the energy in the school changed, the morale changed. It was completely different. It was like it went from like black and white to color is how I describe it. Like you walk down the halls and you hear music coming from one room, and you hear like the stomping, you know, like those old schools that haven't been renovated yet. And you walk on the floor and it sounds like it's going to cave in.
You can almost feel the footsteps too, right?
Totally. Yeah. They like reverberate through the floor when you're walking past that room. And yeah, kids are laughing, they're singing. And yeah, it was incredible. I'm really grateful that they did that. So that's how I got, I guess, started with playing music. Gerald taught me how to play guitar. And I actually learned how to play more chords than like 2 or 3 chords on that guitar that I got for Christmas. So yeah, it was fun.
The complete connection back to your Métis culture. And, you know, there's a huge conversation in that in its own right, of the lack of exposure, the lack of really knowing where you stand when you are Métis.
Totally.
Because you grew up with that Indigenous culture there, but I'm sure that there were certain aspects maybe that felt like you weren't enough of that, or if there was a confusion of what the Métis culture actually was, right? So,
totally. Yeah. It was almost like this area of my life or myself that I didn't unlock yet. And I was from this great place that I loved and was beautiful to me and special to me and dear to my heart, but I didn't fully understand it yet. And being mixed race was, and you know, still is something to this day that I'm navigating and learning about and trying to find my footing in how to live this life that I'm living. But you know, as a kid, I experienced a lot of racism by looking the way that I do, because I didn't look like the other kids.
Yeah.
And I never really understood why until much later. But I think it was really important for me to understand and I guess meet that Métis side of me first and really get to know her and develop that side of myself first. Because that's where I grew up.
Yeah, those different role models, right? They're so important to really see where you could be going in the future.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You touched a little bit about the Métis jigging. That was also a part of this program for you. I know you have quite a history with that part of just dance in general. Even when you are creating your music and you're fiddling, there's still a huge aspect of that dance that you incorporate, especially when you are out teaching the younger students about this sort of culture. We first met during Indigenous Persons Day when you came out to Rocky Mountain House and was a huge pillar of that sort of lesson for all of our kids throughout the community. And I remember seeing them light up at the music that you were sharing, at the same time giving that space to our dancers to really shine and showcase what they were all about. And the education that you were bringing with that too, just with your words, was so beautiful.
Well, thank you.
I'd love to dive a little bit into the history of your dancing as well. You guys won some crazy, you won some awards, like you were traveling all throughout dancing. And do you still keep in contact, or do you still know any of your friends that you grew up with that are still doing that sort of thing?
I do. Yeah. I guess the early days of my dance experience were in those classrooms that were converted into jigging rooms. I remember like going into that room, and it was so different. They had taken out all the desks because it was just a regular classroom before. And they completely cleared it out. And the only thing that was in there was like this old boombox that we used to play like the same fiddle CDs over and over again when we were learning how to jig. But yeah, I still gig with some of them to this day. And we grew up together in this beautiful community. And today we've taken that, what we've done at home, and now we're in the city for the most part sharing it with other schools. So I rarely get to stop and like actually think about how cool that is, because how special it is that we get to take something that somebody gifted to us and share it with others, and especially the youth, you know. And it's so sweet when I get to do this with huge schools in the city that have thousands of students, and you go in there with each group, and then there's always like one or two, maybe three Indigenous kids that just like they know, you know, and they're connecting. And like some of them, they know that we're coming, and they wear their little ribbon skirts and their ribbon shirts. It's just so sweet.
Yeah, just wearing it so proudly.
Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, next week I'm actually going to be doing a half day at a school on the south side with my friend Michelle. And she's an incredible jigger. Like, she's so good, so very good. And she's a great human too.
You know, that just puts a perspective that these programs are not just teaching, you know, the crafts that they're coming in for, right? They're teaching family, they're teaching culture, and those go far past that program, right? Like, to this day, that you're so connected with these people, like you are family, right?
Yeah.
And that all comes and stems from art and creativity and family.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
100%. And it was cool because when we were growing up and we had our little dance group, we called them the Buffalo Lake Reelers. And they actually had a revival this year. They came out of retirement.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's been, oh my goodness, probably since 2008 or 2009 that the group had done any shows or were active. And yeah, this year they brought the costumes out and took them out of the plastic. And yeah, it's really cool to see those costumes be worn again by the new generation. So yeah, I know they had just done a show back home in Buffalo Lake, I think last week. And yeah.
It's got to feel like a complete cycle, right? Like
totally.
Yeah.
100%. I'm just so glad that they're doing it. And yeah, like the kids now that are coming up in the ranks, they're growing up and starting with that understanding of their heritage and their culture and the music and the dance, and they're around it. You know, I think that's really special, and it's really important for the youth to be around that. Like I needed.
It has to be beautiful seeing the evolution of what these programs can offer.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And some of the kids, like, they take it with them for the rest of their lives. Right. Yeah. And yeah, from that point, as like a continuation from that, like, they had the Art Smarts program when I had left as well. And after I'd left and I'd gone to high school in Lac La Biche, I continued playing, and I got myself a red fiddle. It was painted red. Didn't sound very good, but I loved it because red was my favorite color. And yeah, I just started playing shows, and my mom started getting phone calls from different places in the community and little bands that wanted a fiddle player. And I started going to the city a lot to play for different Indigenous events and like the Esqueo Awards. Yeah, it was really cool to actually get to do that as a young person. Like, you know, it was a job.
Yeah.
And within
being paid for doing that the first time had to have been so impactful.
Yeah, it really was. And it kind of happened quickly. And I didn't really have any understanding of what to expect. I was just doing it. I was just saying yes. And my mom really helped me out a lot with that. She was kind of like my manager, my momager for a while. And yeah, she got me a lot of work, but it was a lot of work. It still is, but I think that really was where I developed like a work ethic and how to show up for myself and how to practice. Yeah, I think it really gave me the life skills that I needed to function as a person later on.
Super important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being thrown into that at such an early time too.
Totally. Yeah.
You played all over Canada. Some places in the States as well, I believe. Yeah. What was it like stepping into that Indigenous perspective, that multicultural perspective on such huge stages like that? Was there a shift that you've had to make, some sort of thing that you've had to click into, and how did you get into those motions? How did that feel like for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the first thing that came to mind when I booked these kinds of shows and these kinds of opportunities that were kind of big, it just felt like a huge responsibility. It just felt like, okay, I gotta step it up. But yeah, like for Stratford, for example, I was really fortunate that it was an Indigenous project and production. So when I went there, I didn't know anyone, but I was surrounded by a cast of Indigenous actors and musicians and creatives. So it was amazing because we got to all click together, and I was new to the world. Like, I had not done theater before. And so learning a whole new massive world and way of doing things was one thing, because I had to like turn on my sponge brain and like soak up everything, and all the lingo and the language around it, and the culture of being in the theater was huge. So it was a learning curve for sure. But I think doing an Indigenous production like The Diviners was exactly the way that I needed to ease my way into that. And the celebration of music and Métis heritage and history was so deeply rooted in everything that we did. From the beginning of the rehearsal process, which was very heavy, like there was a lot of work that needed to go into those rehearsals, but we all had the same mindset, and we all reminded ourselves how important it was that we just stuck to the story and put the story first. Are we serving the story? Are we serving what narratives and what's, whose stories we're telling through this, because each audience that we perform for, like we got to give it every time.
Yeah.
So yeah. And really just, I think I really had to remind myself in that process how important it was just to let it come through me, because it was already in there. And I didn't want to overthink it, because it was just going to come through, because I was playing a lot of traditional Métis fiddle tunes in that show, but also improvising as well. It had such a beautiful modern twist that they brought to the music side of things and the dance side of things. But I think it just kind of happened naturally once I settled into it. Yeah, it was definitely a learning curve. I learned a lot.
A lot of teachings of just being able to let go. And just to flow with it, see what happens.
I definitely had to learn how to just let go and just trust the process, like have blind faith.
Absolutely.
That you listen to the right people, and you listen to yourself as well. Like I had to really listen to my intuition with all the moving parts around me. That was kind of hard to do. Like I kind of lost that a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think once I tuned in, it was taken care of from there.
There's so many different native teachings that are just blowing up my brain right now. Teaching the exact same thing, like our 7 sacred teachings, teach you to let go, and all these different aspects. Same thing with our medicine wheel, right? Just to flow along with whatever is coming forward with you, and just trusting your own instincts and your intuition, right?
For sure.
Having that cultural connection. How do you feel coming from that culture has really helped you step into a stage role?
Honestly, it made me feel really, really powerful.
Yeah.
It made me feel really powerful, particularly because I was surrounded by other artists, other Indigenous artists who are further down the road than me. So I learned a lot from them. But yeah, I just had to kind of remember that I was once in a new environment before.
And you overcame it.
And I went through it, and I got through it, and I learned a lot. And I have great memories from those experiences as well, like touring with bands that I've never played with before in a new country, in a new environments, living out of a suitcase. Like if I can do that at 20 years old, I can go a few provinces over and do something new as well. You just kind of forget the things that you've already gone through.
That's so easy to forget about that stuff when you're in the moment, right?
Totally.
It's a new thing every time. It's like, I don't know if I'm good enough for this. I don't know if I can do this. Like, you've done all of that and probably worse in the past. What are you talking about?
I know, right? Yeah, it's crazy. It's so funny. Like even when they had asked me to do a second contract to teach the cast how to jig, because they wanted to have an element of traditional Métis jigging in the show, which I thought was amazing and incredible. There wasn't, because it's based off of a novel, there wasn't any mention really of jigging in the novel, but they decided to bring that to the stage adaptation of it. And I thought that was really cool. But it was like, there's so many amazing jiggers in Canada that you can ask to do this. But I was like, I do this all the time in schools. If I can teach a group of kids how to do the river jig, I can teach a choreography team how to do it. And that was really, really special to watch that come to fruition. The choreographer that did the choreography for the Diviners and other shows in Stratford was amazing. And he had a fantastic dance captain or assistant choreographer by his side. And they have a tap background, like tap dancing. So it was cool for them to watch me and internalize and, observe what I was doing and take the language of tap and the knowledge of tap and the nuances of tap and use that to kind of teach the rest of the cast how to jig in like 2 months. In 2 months, they looked like they were jigging for years.
Yeah, it just made so much sense after that. It blew my mind because it took me years to learn how to jig properly and actually do it well enough to actually dance in time and with rhythm. And that was really special. But yeah, that was definitely one of the cases that I was like, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this. But I was like, wait, I've been doing this for a long time. So I think I can do it. Yeah. And you wouldn't be presented that opportunity if you weren't on that path to being able to do that sort of thing.
For sure.
Right? Because you can always look and be like, oh, there's 1,000 other people that should be having this opportunity. But that opportunity came to you for a reason.
For sure.
For a lot more than just your own talents. It's for who you are. It's for what you're aiming to do.
Yeah. I love that. And having the courage to say yes.
Absolutely.
As well. Yeah.
Acting can play such a huge role on cultural storytelling. Let's dive into how you found your route up that way and where your music background kind of led you into your acting career as well.
For sure. Yeah. When I started to really pick up with music, when I moved to Edmonton, I went to MacEwan to study music. And when I came to the city, I realized how much there was here and how many amazing people there were to learn from and all the different things that you could do. Like when you're in a small town, a small community, like this person's the music guy, this guy is the one that you go to if you want to rent a horse for the day, but in the city, like the possibilities are endless. And when where was I working at the time? I think it was 2015 and I was working at the River Cree Casino and I just always wanted to work in movies. I don't know. I've always loved video games. I've loved film. I've loved watching TV. I did a lot of that when I was a kid. And I just loved it. And so when I came here, I graduated. I was working at the casino. My friend reached out to me and she was like, hey, do you want to work on a film set today? And I was like, sure. Yeah, I'm not doing anything. It's my day off. And I go there and it turns out to be the set of Blackstone. I don't know if you ever watched that show.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I was like, sweet, let's do this. And so, she got me like a background role gig. And I was like in one of the office scenes where Michelle is walking through. And it was just like one of the office clerks. And I think most of the day I was just hanging out in the green room and with one of my heroes. And I remember watching her on TV for years before. And I got to have a conversation with her and chat with her. And obviously she is Métis. She's from Northern Alberta. And yeah, it was really cool to connect with her. And I fell in love with being in that environment. Not only because of craft services, because you just get to snack all day because you're, hurry up and waiting, right?
Yeah.
But I just thought it was really cool to see what happens behind the scenes. So I called my friend and I was like, hey, that was really fun. Let's do more of this. And so did more background work for a bit and just got like more experience being on set. And again, learning the lingo, learning the culture of it and the rules and how everything ticks. And I got myself some headshots and got a little resume together. There wasn't a whole lot on there. And my first like paid speaking acting role was doing the training videos for the Brick. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was pretty cool. I was like, wow, this is easy. I auditioned and I got it. And after that, I realized how hard it was because I think I really lucked out that first one.
Yeah. So just like with stepping onto the bigger stages with music, there has to be a click from your normal everyday life to switching into all these different roles. So your most, I know that you did release you starred in a newer short film that was released this year. Beautiful work, by the way.
Thank you. Did you see it?
I did. Yeah. I've watched it like 3 times now, just recently, like last night.
That's awesome.
But so like stepping into a role like Nina, what are you pulling from? Are you trying to find as many personal perspectives as you can, or when you can't find those perspectives, what do you do to really step into those roles?
Oh, that's such a good question. Those are great questions. Nina was really special for me. The whole year of 2023 was like being faced with roles that were almost like real life happenings for me. Nina is a very complicated character because she was, she's putting on a front. She's not really being herself. And her friends from high school realized that. They recognized that right away, that Malcolm, when he bumped into her in the grocery store, he was like, that wasn't Nina. Like, I don't know who that girl was. It looked like Nina, but that wasn't her. She was being somebody else. And for myself, bringing myself to Nina and bringing her to life was really like channeling the 5 years that I took off of music. And I was, trying to do the sales thing. And I was working the Joe job, as we call it.
Yeah.
And I was in a relationship at the time that had ended. And I felt like everything around me was great. I felt that it was going the way that it was supposed to, but there was something missing. Mm-hmm. I wasn't being my true self. And a huge part of that was I wasn't playing music. I was doing the odd gig here and there. Like if somebody asked me and they were like, please, like, we need you. We don't have anyone else. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And those are the only times that I felt connected. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, okay, something was sparking again. But then I continued to, work the regular jobs. And it just wasn't being authentic. I wasn't being myself. So I think that's what I really channeled for Nina, because it was very much real life for me. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, who we are online and what we post on social media. And the image, I guess, that we curate so carefully on our feeds is not really us.
It's barely us.
It's barely us. Yeah. You're really good at making it seem like you're doing a lot more than you are. And it's like the perfect recipe for like, hey, look what I'm doing. I'm doing so great. But nobody sees, like even now, like nobody sees the hours and hours and hours that I spend practicing until my hands look like that. And my skin is literally like falling off my fingertips. Nobody sees the late nights that I'm driving and my eyes are red. My contacts are like stuck to my brain at this point. I'm like driving home at 4 a.m. after a gig. Nobody sees that kind of stuff, right? But with Nina, bringing it back to her, that was her lifeline, because she wanted greatness. She wanted to be successful. And she thought that the only way that she could get there was a man, was Brian. And this life that she has created online, and this image that she's created online as an influencer. To the outside, to her friends from high school that knew her when she was the dorky girl with gray sweatpants and glasses, who is actually me, like was, you know, she had it all figured out, but she really didn't. Yeah. So I think there are quite a few real life examples and relatable experiences in that film. And I also just want to say that it's so beautifully done. Like, those guys at Limited Visual Productions are geniuses.
Absolutely.
Like, I cannot wait to see what they do next.
Yeah. That wasn't one of their first ones, their first films that you starred in, was it? Or
I think that I know of, I think this was their second.
Their second?
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. Right? That's crazy.
I know. It's wild.
It was very well done. Beautiful words attaching what we actually see on social media compared to everything else that a person is going through. It's 100% true. You don't see all of the hours of dissociation and like the hours of, you know, not knowing if you're on the right path or not, and all of the different anxieties that are attached with just the human perspective, right? And it's such a toxic and unbelievably high bar on where people need to go if they want to be quote unquote successful.
For sure. Yeah. There's so many things that come with the territory of being online. And I couldn't imagine what it's like growing up in this age now where, you know, like, you can get a phone right away. You're on social media right away.
Yeah. I mean, we at least had the benefit of growing up during the awkward stages of technology. You know, technology was kind of growing up with us until it decided to finally surpass us. But someone in the younger generations, they grow up with that stuff in their pockets, right? So they don't know a world outside of the computer. Yeah, you know. So.
Totally. Yeah. What a crazy way to grow up. To me, anyway. Like, they didn't even have to. They don't have to experience dial-up. You know,
you ever had that internet like where it wasn't dial-up, but if God forbid someone answered a phone or even turned the microwave on, everything would just shut down?
That's so real.
Mine was a microwave internet. It like someone decided to cook, everything was off.
Oh no.
It was bad. But it teaches you to have different perspectives, right? And I think, you know, just pulling it back to like our native teachings, our Indigenous teachings, it's so much more important now, I believe, to bring these teachings forward, to pull people out of those toxic relationships that they have with social media and, you know, being successful due to social media, wanting to be an influencer, but not really knowing like what your why is or what your spiritual connection is before you want to be that influencer, right? I think it's so important to understand. So tearing down the medicine wheel even further than what we have with our directions and our 4 elements, when it comes down to your own personal perspective of what your spiritual aspects are, your mental, physical, and emotional, right? None of the other 3 really can matter until you can figure out what your initial why is, right?
1000% agree.
Yeah, but your why only comes back from understanding where you come from, right? Understanding who came before you and what that culture is, and you're connecting to land, I think, has been more important now than ever before, right?
Yes. Yeah, completely, especially with what's at stake right now. You know, I'm a huge supporter and poster of land back. I believe that the land's rights and, you know, the future of like anyone living here is really in our hands, you know, and I think we've evolved too quickly. I believe we have to go back to the basics in a lot of ways. And,
absolutely.
You know, like our ancestors took care of the land. We took care of everything around us as part of us. You know, like we were the keepers, and there was such a responsibility there that was so deep that it was like, you take care of the land, it takes care of you. It was a relationship. And we've moved away from that.
Yeah.
You know, the forest fires that happen every year, they rock me to my core, because our ancestors used fire every day. And we didn't have forest fires like this.
No, but we understood that balance, right?
Yes.
Anything to an extreme can hurt you.
Yes.
Too much fire creates forest fires. Too much water creates floods and can drown you, right? So finding that importance, creating relationships with everything rather than seeing everything as a resource. We need to shift that perspective.
Totally. Yeah.
None of our intellect matters unless we can understand how to morally use that intellect, right?
Absolutely.
We have all of the knowledge on the planet and then some on these things, these little supercomputers in our pockets. But it shows that if you don't have the morals and wisdom to use that properly, you'll hurt yourself and your surroundings. And we see that with how the world is being treated right now. We see that with how extreme the weather and all of these natural disasters are taking hold over the planet and getting worse and worse and worse, right?
Yeah, there's a really heavy imbalance right now. Yeah. That's really beautifully said.
Thank you
for sharing that, because I believe that not just us as Indigenous people, but us as humans, like, we have to continue to be better. Like, we have to look for ways to take care of each other better, especially now, because everything around us is moving so rapidly.
Absolutely.
And we're still operating in the same brain that was, needed and doing pretty good like 50 to 100 years ago, that we haven't caught up yet.
Yeah.
So we need both in order for them to meet again, I think.
Yeah. You need to shift the things that aren't working anymore. And we're currently in a system that isn't working anymore. So we can pull from what still does work and can still thrive, but we have to figure out different ways for the stuff that doesn't work anymore.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
So, yeah. I do want to touch on the aspect that we both come from a similar multicultural background, which is pretty rare in itself. So Cree, Métis, mixed with Vietnamese and Chinese. You are honestly the first person that I've met with that running through their veins. So that was a really cool connection to you. I want to pick your brain a little bit about how that multicultural aspect has influenced your journey up to this point with art, with culture, with family. So you're navigating so many different avenues, not just so. Putting into perspective of just being Métis, you're already walking between two different worlds, right? And that can be confusing on its own, but then mixing the Vietnamese and the Chinese side of it, how did that really impact your journey?
Oh my goodness. As early as I can remember, it's been like a sticky point for me, is to put it lightly. Like I mentioned earlier, when I was younger, when I was growing up in elementary school, I suffered quite a bit of abuse from other kids, and I don't blame them for it. I don't blame their families for it. I don't blame anybody for it. I think that just kind of comes with certain mindsets and certain territories, just not being exposed to different kinds of people.
Yeah, you only know what you know. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And what you've seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always kind of knew I was different, and I didn't look like my parents because I was raised by my grandparents on my mom's side, so my Cree Métis side, and there was that whole other side that I didn't know, and I didn't know what he looked like. My biological dad.
Yeah.
But when I met my biological mom, she showed me a picture of him, and it was like looking at myself. I was like, oh my goodness, who is that? It was such a surreal experience. And so when I grew up and I moved to Edmonton, I started to see more people who looked like me, not like me at all. When I went to high school in Lac-La-Biche, there was one other Asian kid, and I was like, oh my goodness, let's be friends. And we were like best friends.
Teach me, show me your ways.
Show me the ways. But it was kind of funny because I believe that it was always there all along. When I was younger, I think we had like a Japanese exchange student come and teach us how to make sushi. And I have a little bit of Japanese on my dad's side too, apparently. And I loved using chopsticks. I loved the language. I thought it was beautiful. I found a lot of similarities between Japanese and Cree like a lot of the vowel sounds and a lot of the delivery was very similar. And I just thought it was really interesting. And I've always heard it. I just heard it now. Oh, you look Asian, you look Chinese. And, for a long time, for years, I said, I'm not. And I left that part dormant.
A huge piece of your own identity.
Huge, half, right?
That wasn't being nurtured or even looked at.
Yeah. And so I really didn't start to embrace that side of me and accept that that's who I am. It's in my DNA until like my early 20s. And so like 10 years ago. And today I'm so loving and embracing being mixed, because I also understand how important it is to be a voice in being mixed, like being Métis, like you said, is being mixed already. And that comes with so many different challenges and things that you have to navigate in life. But being Métis with all of these other things, people are trying to figure out who you are.
Trying to put you in a box, right?
Yeah. And I don't think they're doing it intentionally. I think that's just how we are as humans, is we want to categorize people so that we feel safer, so we can understand our relationship to them. But I realize that I'm just never going to be in a box, because there really isn't one. It's kind of something that's fabricated. But it's funny, like since our conversation, since you and I met, I've met 2 or 3 other people that are Indigenous and Asian, and beautiful mixes of each. Like the other day, like last Friday, I met two guys that worked together in a store, and both of them were half Native and half Asian. And one of them was Japanese, the other one was Vietnamese. And they were looking at me because I had just come from a gig, and I was in my ribbon skirt, these earrings on, and my turquoise. And they were like, what are you? They like both looked at me when I walked in. And I was like, and they were looking at me, and I was just looking at each other.
The like, Spider-Man.
Totally. It was like that. And we had the best conversation. And we connected online and everything. But we're probably going to be buds now. But it's really cool and validating to see how many other people there are out there like us. And how, to your other question, like how it influences my art, how I live life is how I art, if art was a verb, is being open. I love to live life with an open heart, open eyes, open ears. I need to observe. I need to see and pay attention to what's happening around me, so that I can be, might sound a little bit cheesy, but kind of like a vessel. With the EP that I'm recording right now, the first track on it, I don't want to give too much away, but the first track on it is called Trapline. And it talks about exactly what we were talking about. It tells the story of growing up in a beautiful place with people that don't look like you, but feeling this deep connection to the land, feeling this deep connection to this place that you love. But at the same time, the place is killing you because you may not ever leave. And in the second verse, it kind of talks a little bit about how beauty is something that isn't just innate. It's something that you create for yourself. And it's something that you embody. It's something that you almost choose in a sense, and you ignite it. I have a tattoo on my arm that says ignite. And I try to live my life in a way that is by, igniting and choosing, like making choices. The way that, the way that anything happens in life is, it's by something being sparked. Either something influences you and you choose to take that and do something with it, or you have an idea. But where did that idea come from? It's probably the same channel. Yeah. Right? I believe that if something, I don't know, you might have something to say about this, but if you have an idea because you're a creative, and if you don't take it it will go away.
It'll move on to someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then somebody else will take it and
Yeah.
they'll grab it and then they will bring it out into the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a full believer in that. That's we're just tuning into these things that are just floating around in the air, right? But it comes from that internal knowing of who you are, and it's pulling it right back. That's why it's so important to dive deep into your heritage and to unlock these different parts of your own identity, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we are living in that black and white perspective.
Yeah.
From our earlier conversation, right?
For sure.
Rather than inducing all of those different colors, it's just the equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's beautiful. With your multicultural perspective, how do you find it best to be able to channel that into your music and into your multifaceted art forms? I think that in itself is kind of like answering the question too, now that I'm saying
that's why I'm smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like a superpower.
Yeah. You have so many different perspectives to pull from, right? And even putting yourself in, trying to put yourself in a specific box has never worked for you. So of course you're going to branch out into all these different art forms.
Yeah. I think I really came up against this for the first time when I was trying to figure out what genre of music I was going to make with my songs, because up to this point, I've only ever recorded my fiddle music. So I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to do country? Am I going to do folk? Am I going to do Americana? There's so many different ways to go about it. And somebody had told me, they were like, well, who's your music for? Like, you want to obviously make music for yourself. You want to create art for yourself, but what stories are you going to be telling? Who's going to want to listen to those stories? And I thought about it and I said, well, it's obviously going to be for people that, have ever felt like they didn't ever belong or felt like they wanted to reconnect to their culture in some way, learn the language. On my EP, I have a song that I wrote for my dad that has a little bit of Cree in the chorus. And that was very exposing for me because I was like, I'm not fluent in Cree. What if somebody comes up and starts talking Cree to me? We want to have a conversation. But yeah, just being patient with myself is a huge part of like just letting it happen naturally. Like what we were talking about earlier is just letting go and allowing things to materialize and crystallize the way that they naturally have to and should. Yeah. And at this point in my life, I would really love to reconnect with my Asian side because I haven't had the opportunity to meet any of that side of my family. I think that's probably going to be the next big project.
Next chapter.
For myself, the next chapter. Yeah. I'm excited.
Beautifully put.
Thank you. This is a song that I wrote for my childhood best friend who lived across the field, over the fence. We used to jump the fence to see each other, hung out all summer long. She was very, very special to me. We wrote books together. We drew comic books together. She was like a huge, huge influence for me early on with art.
She was raised by me. 1992 with wild roses on her nose. A life like a we're always playing, dreaming dreams, fast and living. The summer's slow. Molly and Cool, my best friend, writing stories. Think I know when. she moved back to Surrey. She stood at the door and said, good luck. Look at you, you don't need it. We said we'd stay in touch, but I heard I got pretty rough. Had a little girl with an maiden name who gave her everything she needed. My anchor used to be a tone, writing stories about a great unknown. Jump that gate into a creator called your own. It ain't easy being older now. I wish things were simple like they were at your house. Wish I could thank you for the memories and for the woman that I am, because you carried the woman that I am, because you carried. Oh, I'm the woman that I am, because you carried.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you for listening and inviting me. This has been great.
Where can we listen to that nonstop? Has that been recorded yet?
Yes, this one
Yeah.
has been recorded. This one is going to be on the EP. And yeah, we should be finished by end of December. First release will be just a single on February 7th, and then probably another release every few weeks after that. But we're looking like a full release of the EP in the summertime. And
Amazing.
at that point, it's going to be released on all platforms, wherever you can find music and stream music.
Well, I'm looking very forward to that.
Me too.
Is there a
Thank
place
you.
that we can pre-save that? Is there going
Not
to be a
yet,
place? Not
but
yet?
there will
Okay,
be.
there will be?
a
Okay.
pre-save link coming
Amazing.
down the road. Thank
Okay.
you.
I will be in tune with that. Thank you so
Awesome.
much again.
Thank you.
So looking into the future of everything that we've talked about with music and with acting, with art, and connecting that to our culture, where do you is there any advice that you would like to give anyone who is multicultural, Indigenous, who's wanting to start up in any sort of art form for the first time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say just pay attention to what you love first, pay attention to what makes you forget that they're performing and that you're even in a room. Find, if you love film, if you love TV, if you find, actors around you in your community that like make you forget that they're acting in their performance. If you find music that, if you feel like it's written about you and your life or something that you really connect with, maybe answer that call. Be patient with yourself. Like if you don't know exactly what you want to do yet, just be open.
Be curious.
Be curious. Stay curious, but stay curious and intentional at the same time. Like keep your ears turned on for opportunities around you. Meet people. Oh my goodness, that's a huge thing. Is get into rooms with people in them that do what you want to do. Like find somebody that is living the life that you want to live one day, and like do a little bit of gentle stalking. Get to know them, introduce yourself, have conversations, connect with people, network, because other people is how you're going to be inspired and how you will learn about different ways you can go about it. If I could do this all over again, I would find somebody who is doing the things that I want to do at a high level that would take me under their wing, or at least, give me a little bit of guidance on where to start and how to navigate things. Because starting isn't the hardest part. The hardest part is navigating the troublesome waters that come with everything that you do, particularly in the creative space. There, you will come across hurdles. You will come across things that hold you back a little bit. But everything is figure outable.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would say.
You can't do this alone.
You can't.
You have to be able to not be scared. Well, we're all scared of something, but you have to be able to push yourself past the fear of not wanting to put yourself in those rooms.
Yes.
For whatever anxiety you're putting yourself through that makes you feel like you're not worthy to be in that space, or even talk to those people. Just put yourself out there.
Totally.
The worst that can happen is rejection. And honestly, that's great too.
Yeah.
You learn so much about yourself when you get rejected. Right?
That is so very true. Yeah, for sure. I'm in rooms with new people all the time. And even at this point, in my 30s, I still feel anxiety. I still feel like, oh, I really want to talk to this person. Like I was in Toronto playing a gig, and I was at this like really fancy gala event, and I saw a musician that I just adore. And I was like, I really want to go talk to her, but what do I say? Is she gonna think I'm weird? And people are mostly nice and they want to help, and they want to meet you, and they want to chat. But you won't know that. You won't learn that there are more good, open, friendly people in the world than the opposite if you don't put yourself out there and have the courage to just give yourself a little nudge.
So looking at the future generations, where do you envision? What are you hoping for with these younger adults, with these younger Indigenous artists that are taking up that mantle or getting ready to?
Oh my goodness. There's so many already, like young Indigenous artists that are really doing amazing things, and they're connecting, and they're finding their own voice within their art. And it's incredible what's happening right now in all genres. Really, it's really cool to be. It's a really good time to be Indigenous. And with the art that's happening right now, the music, the film, the TV, like they're winning awards. Mm-hmm. We're winning Golden Globes now. It's just such a celebration time. But what I hope for the future is just more of this trajectory. I hope for more young people to connect with their identity as early as they possibly can. And I understand that there are reasons why somebody may not be ready. Like for myself, like I was asked every single time, oh, have you been to Japan? Have you been to China? Have you been to Vietnam? Like, I know I'll go one day, but you're not ready until you're ready. Mm-hmm. Even to start learning the language and, going to events, being a part of the community, finding a community. There's so many nuances within each of these steps, right? But that's what I hope for the newer generations and the generations to come, is that what's happening in Buffalo Lake right now, which is beautiful. Babies are being born into their culture, and they're surrounded by fiddle music, and they're given sashes. It's so cool. I love it.
Amazing conversation with you today. Thank you so much for wanting to be a part of what we're doing with the podcast here, and for being so open with your story.
Thank you, Tyler. I really appreciate that. This has been great. Thanks for having me. Great conversation, great questions.
Thank you again for tuning into this episode of the Voices of Resilience podcast. I hope Darla's story and her conversation has impacted you in unique ways. And if so, please let us know in the comments. It will help us direct to where we think we need to go with this podcast. And until the next episode, hi.